All right, good morning everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us for today's short overview on the top 10 steps you need to consider to correctly select, but also specify high friction coloured road surface treatments. My name is Louis Mitrevsky, one of the business development managers with OmniGrip Direct, and together with my colleague Aaron, who's also, you probably can see, we will be taking you through our presentation today. Now, we would hope that you will find this session very informative and you get lots out of it. But if you find some parts of it being confusing and have some questions, we'll give you our details towards the end, and feel free to to contact us, and we'll be happy to assist. But as Dave mentioned, before the end of the presentation, on your screen you'll get a little pop-up asking you if you would like us to send you our ebook on coloured high friction surfaces, as well as if you would like an attendance certificate for CPD purposes. So on that note, let's get into it. These are the things that we're going to cover today. I'm going to talk a little bit about OmniGrip Direct as a company. We're going to talk a little bit about what OmniGrip surfacing is, our surfacing portfolio, product grading and applications, the finishes and textures of the product as well. We're going to touch on specification and compliance, installation methods, science behind the specification, and at the end we're going to see a few pictures of our product versus some of the other products that are out there in the market. And at the end, we will provide you with the specification checklist. What this is, it's basically a little checklist with dot points for you to consider when designing and specifying a product that is a surface treatment or a coloured surface treatment for the road. Dave, if you can give us the next slide, and we'll get into what OmniGrip Direct is. OmniGrip Direct, or OGD, is an Australian-owned and operated civil contracting group specialising in innovative safety surface treatment technology. We are a division of the SmarterLight group of companies, which also include Vivacity. Vivacity is a smart safety lighting solutions company. And we also have SafetyPath, which works with photoluminescent technology for signage and also line marking. We've got 22 years of experience in road safety and infrastructure, and we provide recyclable and sustainable product solutions for the market. You will find our products used in bus lanes. I'm sure you've noticed those red bus lanes around town. Green cycle lanes as well. You will find our product also used in pedestrian crossings, and then our high friction product used at dangerous roads and also dangerous intersections. I'll hand it over to Aaron, and he'll take you through the next few slides, and I'll be back soon as well.
Thanks, Louis. Appreciate that, mate. Hope everyone's enjoying the presentation so far. Now, what I'd like to talk about now is the key elements of what OmniGrip CST actually is. So the nature of competition in any market can create a bit of uncertainty around what products are and then also how they perform in the market that we're in. So what we've found so far is that many alternatives are in the market that purport to be OmniGrip CST, and that can compound a bit of confusion and uncertainty around what is what out there in the market. So what I'd like to do now for the next couple of minutes is just take a moment to explain what OmniGrip CST actually is. Now, OmniGrip CST is a two-component cross-linking epoxy resin coupled with our coloured recycled glass aggregate dressing. Now, this embodies a skid-resistant surface traffic delineation and management treatment that is known as the OmniGrip system. So it encompasses a skid resistance value, which is referred to as SRV, of more than 55. Now, this number surpasses the current specification requirements and allows for the proven 5+ year functionality and performance, which is also a critical component of the specification. The product also holds a high polished stone value, which is referred to as PSV, and we'll elaborate on that function a little bit further on in the presentation. Our high friction surface treatment captures the same resin properties that I've explained earlier, but it is coupled with a calcined bauxite aggregate, and the SRV exceeds 70 on that particular product. So it's very, very high, leading the market in that particular category. Now, the key driver for OmniGrip is to enhance and improve safety in the community. That's really what the business is about. That's at the forefront of our minds and all the people that work here. And it specifies listening. It's critical to understand, what the product is, how it performs, and also why it performs in such a way. Now, this particular material and product is designed to be compatible with multiple substrate types. So what I mean by that is suitability for roads, pathways, speed tables, open spaces, cycle paths, estates, decorative areas, bridges, freeway entrances, roundabouts, and other categories similar to those. Now, a road, a pathway, other assets that I've mentioned, they're integral parts of urban planning and infrastructure. So having solutions that are independently endorsed and supported by external businesses, of which there are a couple on the screen there, namely Safe System Solutions and Cycling Victoria, I think that provides an additional level of comfort to stakeholders and specifies listening. Now, I'm going to play a short 2-minute video for you all that encapsulates visually the key points that I've mentioned so far, and at a high level outlines what the OmniGrip system is. So Dave will play this video for you shortly.
Coloured bike lanes show space that is reserved for bicycle riders. They also remind drivers to look for riders when they are turning or entering and leaving driveways. However, not all bike lane surfaces are the same. The one on the left is made from paint-based products. That means its colour and texture won't last as long. Its texture wears down more quickly from vehicle traffic. That will affect its ability to reduce skidding and sliding. It can become slippery for drivers and riders if not replaced. As its colour wears off, drivers are less likely to notice the lane. Using rates and taxes, road managers need to repair it and reapply it more often, if they have the money, that is. The one on the right is made from a unique binding system that uses Australian recycled glass. It's called OmniGrip CST. It lasts longer than paint-based products. In comparable heavy traffic, it can last about 4 times longer. It maintains its texture for longer. It retains its colour for longer. It's been in use for many years by some of Australia's most progressive councils. Why is this important? A durable textured surface reduces slips and falls by riders, particularly when the road is wet. Texture reduces the risk of cars and motorcycles skidding and sliding when they brake on it or turn across it. It reduces the risk of pedestrians slipping on it when they walk across the lane. Using a surface that is durable for colour and texture improves community safety, reduces lifetime costs for road managers, and saves taxpayers money. That's your money. Insist that your council and state government uses OmniGrip CST. It is made by OmniGrip Direct, Australia's largest user of recycled Australian glass for specialist safety surfaces. Rider, driver, and pedestrian safety depends on it.
And it's a nice segue into the surfacing portfolio, which I'm going to talk about now. So what this does is best breaks down the 4 system design considerations as they relate to specification for surface treatment. So there are 4 types of design considerations that we feel are paramount in design for this particular treatment. So step 1 is the type of treatment. So, what is required in a civil engineering sense? Is it a cycle lane? Is it a crossover? Is it a bus lane? Is it a pedestrian crossing? And what is the corresponding substrate that application relates to? Very, very important. The second thing is the skid resistance levels. So we've covered some skid resistance elements in reasonable detail in the previous slides, but it's namely about the requirement as to whether this is for vehicle traffic, in which case you need a particular aggregate size, or if it's non-vehicle, in which case that would be suitable for pedestrians. And it's a very important component when considering application for surface treatment. Step 3 is the colour retention. So this is the traffic delineation component utilising the colour spectrum that's universally recognised for buses, cycle lanes and ped crossings alike. And fourthly, it's the system performance. So how long is the system required to last for in line with the associated specification? Very, very important. Now, the most common specification items are shown on the screen, and I'll quickly walk you through these before handing back over to Louis. So on the far left there, you've got the bus lane. So this is designed to withstand large, high volume vehicular traffic at prolonged periods of time. And the common colour allocation is the raspberry red. You'll see these out in many main areas, particularly in council areas and also on high traffic roads. The second item is the cycle lane. So having the emerald green colour provides a clearer delineation beyond the traditional line marking symbols. And it's also important because the PSV value on that cycle lane is critical to drivers if they accidentally veer off into that particular area, because it is a shared road, and don't see a cyclist in that actual lane. It will provide the adequate skid resistance to make sure they don't slide and potentially injure somebody. The third item there is the pedestrian crossing. So these are traditionally installed outside schools, and they provide high visibility, the additional safety awareness for young children, particularly in an area where you have a lot of dense traffic in spurts and blocks of time. And they also increase the visibility at night by being really, really bright. And the fourth one is the high friction surface treatment. So this has got a design life of between 7 to 8 years. As Louis had mentioned earlier, very, very important in curved bends, high accident zones, black spot locations. And what this does is provide a significant reduction in braking distance and impact speed. It also contributes to reducing the wet weather crashes. It's also available in two types of colours. So there's a calcine bauxite, which is a darker colour, which you're seeing on the screen there. And there's also a buff bauxite, which is a lighter grey. Now I'll throw back to Louis to continue this presentation and take us on to the next slide. And Louis, you're on mute, so if you can just unmute yourself, that'd be fantastic.
Sorry, guys, technology. Eh? Okay, so on this in this cross section, we will touch on how CST is built up, and also the different size aggregate or recycled glass we use for different applications. So on the top cross section, we have an aggregate that's 3 millimeters in size. Now, this is suitable for areas or roads where we have heavy traffic or vehicular traffic. On the bottom, however, it's one of our blue sapphire products that's been installed. That's a 1.5 mil aggregate size, again suitable for pedestrian and also cyclist only traffic. And then you can see the substrate, which could be either concrete or asphalt. And then after we assess that the substrate is nice, clean, and ready to take the resin, we apply the resin, and then we sprinkle the recycled aggregate on top of that. Then we give it a bit of time to set, and that could be 2 to 3 hours in the warm summer days or nights, or up to 6 to 8 hours during the colder winter months. And so once that's set, our crew go out there and sweep the excess aggregate, and the road or the surface is ready to take on the traffic. So very, very simple installation method. If you can give us the next slide, Dave, we'll just see a snapshot of how it looks on the road. Okay, so this is just another snapshot of how it'll normally look on the road. The aggregate size used here is 3 millimeters because obviously it's installed on the road and it's a trafficable area. You can see the resin in the middle there, and yeah, as I mentioned previously, once we apply the resin on a clean solid substrate, and then the aggregate sprinkled over, we clean the excess aggregate once the product has set, and the road is ready to take on traffic. And that's about it on this slide. Over to you, Aaron.
Perfect. So what I'm going to talk about now is the science of CST. Now, there's quite a bit of detail in what I'm about to go through. So if you've got any questions, pop them in the Q&A, and we're happy to answer them. So finishes and surface textures, in our view, are the key items that signify the difference between a surface treatment that performs and exceeds skid resistance for specification, and those that will be susceptible to failing the defects liability period and the expected safety levels that we should see out in the community. So to explain this a little bit further, we need to first outline what skid resistance actually is. So in simple terms, skid resistance is maintaining adequate friction between the vehicle's tyres and the substrate. So this is paramount to road safety. Now, there's three properties that are involved in creating that skid resistance. So the first one is the macro texture. So this is normally known as texture depth. The second one is micro texture, which more broadly is friction. And the third one is the polished stone value, and that's what we call PSV. Now, what do these all mean? So macro texture is the rapid removal of water from the contact point, and this allows a stronger level of micro texture when there is contact with the vehicle tyre, i.e. less water, more friction, more skid resistance. Microtexture is defined by the degree of friction between the tyre and the contact surface and its ability to resist polish by vehicle traffic during accelerating and braking. And polished stone value is the measurement function of resistance to polishing action of vehicle tyres under conditions resembling those on the surface of a road. So they're the three key points, and what you're going to see on the screen here are a couple of pictures that really outline each section really clearly. So picture one on the far left is about identifying the ideal texture depth and the relative aggregate size. So the larger aggregate will provide a longer whole of life texture depth. When you use the wrong aggregate size, so if you use a smaller aggregate size that's not suitable for the application, or you use a small quartz or a paint or a sand, what this actually does is reduces the texture depth. And that's demonstrated in the image on the far left. It slows and stops the water removal from the surface, and then it reduces friction at the contact point. So this is what reduces skid resistance, and this is what makes the area slippery. So it's a critical component for specifiers to understand, because when there's generic wording on a civil drawing and an assessment that's put forward on those drawings, materials that can show these characteristics are often what ends up on the road. And this type of material can contribute to catastrophic incidents or injury. So it's really important to understand these elements when you're assessing a drawing. The second item is maintaining the adequate friction levels. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, the correct aggregate size and the correct polished stone value are critical to ensure that skid resistance that's emitted on the installation of day one, that's the same for the design life of the product. It doesn't diminish. So if the aggregate is too small, it's highly susceptible to polishing smooth, and that reflects a low PSV. And if this happens, what you're doing is you're lowering the friction levels, and this causes an unsafe substrate. And that's what you'll see on the bottom of your screen there in the center. Now, a high PSV, it wears over the course of time, which is natural through traffic, but it doesn't polish. So this is depicted in the image above. And this is what maintains friction levels for the life of the system. Now, OmniGrip CST product has a PSV of more than 63. So it's one of the highest on the market. Anything less than 60 generally creates polish, and then you create that slippery surface. Now, the high friction material, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that is a PSV value of 70. And this is critical for application on the road in dangerous bends and regional roads and regional areas. Now, the third item is about maintaining the colour. So the point of difference with the OmniGrip recycled aggregate is it embodies the full prism of colour on all sides. So it creates a whole of life colour retention. So even when the expected wear through traffic occurs over time, which it will, the visual impact of that coloured surface, it's not compromised. And nor is the skid resistance, which is really important. So a traditional coloured aggregate or a coating, they commonly have only the colour that appears on the top. And when that polishes and wears over time, the colour wears away, you're left with a clear aggregate and you're left with a slippery surface. And generally, and you'll see this in future slides, the comparison between a correct application and an inferior one is quite powerful. And we'll move on to the next slide, Dave, when you have a moment. Thanks, Dave. So specification and compliance. So, following on from the previous slide, this is a critical excerpt from the current Vic Road standard spec for 431, which is coloured surface treatment. So there's many misconceptions about various specs and how they apply to application on the road. Now, this is not a line marking spec. This is a coloured surface treatment spec. So when you look at the civil drawing, it's important to understand the difference because coloured surface treatments is a specialist application and should be considered as such. So the excerpt on the screen there is a documented evidence of satisfactory performance over at least 5 years for the coloured surface treatment in a heavy urban traffic environment. Must be provided, with the tender or the secured work. So the documentation may include references from clients, evidence of texture with time, evidence of skid resistance with time, colour retention, and durability. So what the spec is asking is performance for 5 years to ensure that it adequately meets the requirement. Now, understanding and interpreting this specification is really important. So what you're seeing on the screen on the right there is some installation dates of our cycle lanes and our bus lanes, namely 8 years and 5 years, and then the current realistic timeline of those installations. So you'll see in those pictures that they have performed and are satisfactory over 5 years, and that's really, really important. Now, the one on the top right there, that's a realistic expectation of what you would get from an OmniGrip system. So that's 8 years functionality. Now, obviously with an asset maintenance regime, some simple washing or sweeping, then you're going to, I guess, prolong the ability for that colour to retain at the same level it is on the left. But we're about being realistic and being honest with how these applications work. And an 8-year life cycle is exceptional in this environment. Many of the other inferior materials out there, you may get 6 months, you may get 12 months, you may get 18 months, but you're not going to get 5. And when you're putting your drawings together, it's important to understand that, because what you may envisage being on the road isn't what ends up on the road. And Louis will elaborate on that further with his specification comments as we move through the presentation. And we'll just move to the next slide, Dave, at your convenience. Installation considerations. So I've got on the screen there 6 items that I think are quite important when you're considering how a material is installed on the road. And this is important at the design stage because once it's clarified at the design stage, then people understand exactly what they need to go and source from a quotation point of view, whether it be a head contractor or a civil contractor. So the substrate, so the preparation and quality of the existing substrate. So this is really, really important to understand, because any surface treatment, be it an OmniGrip or an alternative, is not a replacement for the existing substrate. So the substrate must be in reasonable quality. It must be free from cracks and crocodile cracks and all this sort of stuff. Our material will not replace a substrate. It's designed to enhance the skid resistance on top of a substrate. So that's really, really important to understand. Curing requirements, also important. So asphalt and concrete have different curing requirements, and depending on what action is being undertaken on a particular project, when a surface treatment can be applied is dictated by those curing times. Temperature for application. Now, in the summer months, it's always a lot warmer. The temperature on the road is a lot warmer, and any technical data sheet that has the correct information on it will determine what temperature applications are suitable for the application that's going on the road. So generally anything under a particular temperature of 10 degrees, it's too cold to be applying a surface treatment on the road, and anything above 60 degrees is clearly too hot. So the road temperature is always different to the actual air temperature. So it's important to understand that. Now, technical data sheets is also another critical element, and every business that is putting something on the road should have detailed technical data sheets and ideally an ISO accreditation, because it proves that their corporate management system within their business stands up to dealing with all different levels of business, not just the small business, but also dealing with the tier ones and the large scale organizations. And corporate management systems that provide ISO accreditation effectively mean that you can handle any size project and have the comfort that the quality that gets on the road is paramount. And further, the experience of the business doing what they do. So our business its core function is to provide surface treatments. Whilst we do many other things under the Smarter Light Group banner, the OmniGrip business, its core function is to apply surface treatments. So we're not trying to differentiate with too much diversification. What we do is a specialist task, and we do it really well. And that's really important for people to understand when they're wanting a product that goes out on the road, is that the business that's putting it on the road is really, really experienced in doing that. And I'll move over to Louis now to take us through the next series of slides. Thanks, Louis.
Thanks, Aaron. As Aaron mentioned, guys, getting the specification right is very important from the start. And we'll talk a little bit about this, the little picture that's in this specification that's on the screen. But before I do that, I just want to give you guys an example of what can go wrong if the specification isn't clear enough from the start. So just recently, we were asked by a client to go out on sites and inspect a job that was completed by another contractor, which had a green surface on a bicycle lane. Okay, so there was a specification for this job that said to use OmniGrip CST for the bicycle lanes or a similar product. And as the contractor would do, they look at the drawings and they go, they go over the drawings, and they ask clients they ask suppliers to provide the best pricing for that actual product. And as a contractor would do, they look at the drawings and they go out to the marketplace and get quotes for the product required on that job. Companies that specialize in surface treatment price the job with the product they have available, obviously. A lot of companies have green surface treatment, some sort of green surface treatment. So the contractor compares, they provide the prices to the contractor, and the contractor compares the prices, okay? And what they would normally do is, they compare the prices, and they would normally go for the cheapest offer that's out in the market. Now, the contractor in our example engaged a supplier, and the green color was installed, okay? And upon inspection, the council inspectors realized that what was installed is not what they wanted, and the product installed doesn't have the properties they actually require. So what this means is there was no high friction. Well, there was some sort of high friction, but not to the level what the council required. No recycled glass was used on the product, which probably didn't sit well with the council. And also the lifespan of the product, it definitely wasn't, the longevity of the product definitely wasn't seven years. So the council issued a non-conformance to the contractor. And as the contractor would do, they issued a non-conformance to the supplier. And to cut a long story short, it ended up costing someone close to over $100,000 to remove and reinstall the product by us. And it also definitely left some mud on a lot of people's faces in that process. Now, all this could have been avoided if the specification was in detail, and if the specification technical properties were actually written out on the actual drawing, or even in the external finisher schedule. Now, what's symbolic about the spec on the screen is, yes, it says green surfacing for bicycle lanes, but green surfacing could mean any green surface. The spec also doesn't mention the lifetime of the product installed. So, when the contractor looks at it, they'll be like, well, it doesn't say how long it has to last. So I'll put my product forward, even if it lasts 3 to 6 months. It actually hasn't been made clear. Doesn't mention the size of the aggregate for the trafficable area. So, you know, as you've probably noticed from our previous slides, on a vehicular road surface, we would use a 3 mil aggregate, just so, you know, it gives the product that robustness, and you know, it gives it that longevity. Also, it didn't mention the actual color that was meant to be used, as you know, to ensure that the product is shiny enough, and you know, the gloss is there for over a long period of time. So with a spec like this one, the contractor will select the cheapest product available in the market, and it's usually paint, and that paint will potentially last 3 to 6 months, even a little bit longer. And depending on traffic, you know, the paint will fade away, and the quartz or sand that's potentially been placed in the product to give it a little bit of friction, that quartz or sand will disappear, and all you have is paint. And when the road surface is wet, guess what happens on paint? It becomes very slippery and unsafe. So instead of making the road surface safer, you know, this product makes the road surface a slip hazard, and it's probably the last thing, you know, anyone wants. You can give us the next slide, Dave. That'll be much appreciated. Okay, so this is an example of how a specification should look like. Okay, you know, it specifies exactly what product is being used, what the product is being used for, whether it's, you know, for vehicular area or substrate, or whether it's used for pedestrian crossings or bicycle lanes. It specifies the type and size of recycled glass to be used in order to keep the high friction properties up, and also keep the road users safe for a long period of time. It talks about the standard the product needs to meet, and each state has different standards. So, you know, depending on what state you're from, you've probably got to check with your road authority for this. It also talks about the color of the product, and ensures the color is bright and visible enough for a long period of time. And it talks about the type of epoxy, which is probably the key in this product. It talks about the right type of epoxy that needs to be used in order to keep the product bonded to the road and to the recycled glass for up to 5 to 8 years. So by being specific like this in the specification, you ensure that the right product is used, and that the product that you have in mind as a specifier at design stage is the product that actually gets installed on the road by the contractor. So I guess I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of, you know, what a ROM spec looks like, and then something with a bit more information that can potentially, yes, get the job done properly, but at the same time, it's about safety. You know, where what we do is about enhancing the safety for the road users, whether that's cyclists, pedestrians, even you know, car operators. And if you can give us the next slide, Dave, I think that was, yeah. So the next slide, I mean, pretty straightforward. We've just put a few pictures on the top there of our product, and a couple of pictures of some of the product that we see in the marketplace, that's available in the marketplace. So on the top left picture there, we've got our OmniGrip CST in a bicycle lane, which I believe this one's about 8 years old. It's been operating for about 8 years on the road. And look at its condition. It's still got the texture. You can still see the high friction in comparison to something below that picture, which that picture is actually down the road from my place, and I live in a new estate, and that picture there, that paint is no older than 2 years. You know, and as you can see, it sort of disappeared. And then the bicycle lane, that's a bicycle lane that we did about 5 years ago. And then you can see, you know, the performance of paint versus our bus lane. But I reckon the most interesting one, I would say, is the pedestrian crossing on your right-hand side. You've got the CST at the top, which is nice, bright and yellow, but look at the picture below that. That's a paint-based pedestrian crossing. And the most remarkable thing about this picture is all those skid marks that you see on the paint, okay? Now, what that means is when people are braking over that pedestrian crossing, the friction is so low that the cars are skidding over it. And, you know, that's probably the last thing you want. Instead of having a surface that would help you brake, this is actually promoting, you know, skidding. And it's probably the last thing the specifier, but even the contractor wanted when they were installing it. So, you know, I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of, you know, what CST is and recycled glass and the friction and the longevity of this product versus something that looks similar to CST, but is no different to paint with a bit of sand and quartz in it. And next slide, Dave. Okay, so I think we're sort of coming towards the end of the presentation, and this is the specification checklist that we want to provide you guys. So you can print it out, have it on your desk. So the next time you come across a job that requires high friction colored road surface treatment, you can use this as a guide to kind of help you consider a few things that would cover all ground and help you create a good and solid specification. So obviously the objective of the treatment is very important. Is the colour treatment for a special purpose road lane, a path or a decorative surface? Is it a standard single colour or a custom design? We do many custom designs, especially products that are used off the road. We do a lot of decorative jobs as well at schools and libraries and companies or whatever. You know, we can do anything anywhere in a decorative sense. What is the desired life expectancy of the surface to reduce ongoing maintenance and cost? OmniGrip, you know, lasts 5 to 8 years, and our high friction surface treatment 8 to 10 years. So what's the longevity you want to get out of the product that you're specifying or you are installing? Also, I think I skipped over the desired skid resistance and slip resistance requirements, which are probably the key to this product. Type of substrate, what are you installing it on? Is it going to be concrete, asphalt, bitumen, spray seal, steel, timber? We can do many things. You know, if it's different to concrete and asphalt, probably best you come and talk to us just so we can help you with how the product will perform and will react over a long period of time. The traffic type, you've got to consider the traffic type. Is the treatment going on a road, pathway, courtyard, open space? Obviously, you know, the roads require a more solid product and aggregate. Is the area used by both motor vehicle traffic or pedestrians? I mean, that's sort of, you know, that's going to help you determine whether you're going to use a 3 mil aggregate or you're going to use a 1.5 mil aggregate. Once again, the aggregate type, you know, what do you want to use? Do you want to use sand? Do you want to use quartz? We provide recycled glass. We also have a product that has recycled rubber. And we also have some decorative products that use natural aggregate. And the high friction, of course, is all bauxite. Specification, does this construction specification clearly identify the desired product, binder, aggregate, road agency? Obviously, every state, every road agency has different specifications. If you get stuck on this, if you need help, there's a number on this sheet. Feel free to give us a call. We're happy to help you out and, you know, and send you all the information that you need. And do the notes and the drawings clearly link to the specification and references to the desired product? I mean, I touched on that before. I gave you the example of, you know, reading a vague spec or purchasing or installing something that's been put on a vague spec, and the repercussions, I mean, you know, you probably end up doing it twice. So to save everyone hassle and save money at the same time, and also time and time. It's critical that that specification is very clear as to what you would like to achieve with the product that you're specifying.
So there's our contact information on the screen. The 1300 961 678 is our phone number, and admin@omnigripdirect.com.au is probably the easiest way to contact us for more information. So look, thank you everyone, and we'll certainly follow up on any queries you might send to us directly. Thanks again. Bye.